Welcome, welcome, my friends, to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Well, my friends, been another week of very bad news. The week before last was really depressing, and you keep hoping that, well, it can't get any worse, and then there you are staring the reality in the face once again, reminded that nothing is going to get better. There is no better future, that all we have is a better past. Give me the good old days of Hitler and Stalin. At least we had a future. Raphael Lemkin came out of the Holocaust believing that if we could name the evil genocide, he could convince the nations to abide by a genocide convention, a legal framework that would eliminate the evil. From Hitler and Stalin came the United Nations and the crazy idea that you could have a world order governed by law and that women could be protected from rape and children from starvation. Alas, those were the days. Now all semblance of governance is collapsing. Last week, we witnessed the US and allied forces fighting Iran-backed proxies in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, with no sign that Iran was prepared to negotiate a nuclear deal or back off in any way. Oh, and his shout out to syphilis, which is making a spectacular comeback after spending years in the shadows. In January 2024, the CDC reported that cases of syphilis had reached their highest levels in more than a decade. Over 200,000 cases reported in 2022, double the figure in 2018. We're really just taking off here. And speaking of oldies, genocide is once again all the rage. From Myanmar, we heard last week, the UN High Commission for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said that the country's human rights crisis was now in free fall, with the military routinely targeting civilians, medical facilities, and schools. The world, he added, was paying insufficient attention to the situation. Amid all the crises around the world, it is important not to forget Myanmar, Turk said in a statement on Tuesday. The people of Myanmar have been suffering for too long. As the military has suffered setbacks, and after setbacks on the battlefield, they have unleashed, they're launching waves of indiscriminate aerial bombardments against entire villages have been burned to the ground. The Rohingya have been suffering like this since 1982, over 40 years. The Rohingya are a stateless Indo-Aryan ethnic group who are predominantly follow Islam. And in 2017, over 740,000 of them fled to Bangladesh, where they're living in refugee camps. An estimated 1.4 million remain in Myanmar. The Rohingya are among the most persecuted minorities in the world. They are denied citizenship under the 1982 Myanmar nationality law. They are also restricted in their freedom of movement, access to state education, service jobs, all that stuff. The legal conditions faced by the Rohingya in Myanmar have been compared to apartheid by academics and Bishop Tutu, South Africa. The anti-apartheid activists called it apartheid. Most recent mass displacement of the Rohingya led the International Criminal Court to begin an investigation against the Myanmar government for ethnic cleansing and genocide. Those investigations are ongoing, so don't hold your breath waiting for a decision against the case just brought against Israel. The case against Myanmar is over 6 years old. And that brings us to Israel. Last week, Haaretz had a story, quote, "Meet the Israelis who are trying to physically block the ethnic cleansing unfolding on the West Bank." I printed it out. It's like this, a single space, 13 pages, 7,000 words about heroic Israelis who go out onto the West Bank to escort Palestinian shepherds and farmers, help trying to protect them from Israeli settlers who are killing them and trying to basically force them off the land. You know, I attend several online synagogue services, and in all of them, there are special prayers now for the state of Israel, for the Israel Defense Forces, for the hostages, for the victims of gun violence and drug addiction, for the victims of terror everywhere. But there's never a prayer for the Palestinians. There is never a recognition that Israel is intentionally carrying out a policy of ethnic cleansing and genocide. The very idea is a despicable example of the blood libel. But there's no room. So on the one side, you have the vast majority of the Jewish community that refuses to recognize the Jewish complicity in the genocide or even in inflicting intentional pain on the Palestinians. We are the innocent victims for simply fighting against the forces of darkness and hate. For the congregations that I pray with, there's just not enough bandwidth to include the Palestinians. It might be worth recalling that God held the Jewish people liable for the death and destruction that he inflicted on the Egyptians during the Exodus. After the Exodus, God demanded that the Jews sacrifice their firstborn animals and redeem their firstborn children as payback for the killing of the firstborn of Egypt. Yeah, it might be worth remembering that there is always payback or unintentional consequences, as the historians like to say. One final note. Back in the day, one of the principles of the show was that anything I said in the class remains in the class. I told my students that they were not to tell people what I was saying. I said that if somebody asked you, hey, what did Mehler talk about today in class? You said, nothing at all. It was all bullshit. It's always bullshit. And if you said anything, I would deny absolutely whatever you said I said. I get these notes from Facebook and YouTube with helpful advice on how I might grow my audience. But the point is, I don't want to grow my audience. I've already had a video that gone viral. It was a very unpleasant experience. So please, don't share, don't like, don't do anything that might attract attention to my channel or encourage me further in my unnatural obsessions. Well, friends, that'll do it for this week. Keep your heads low, stay safe. If you manage to survive the week, check in next Sunday for another edition of More Bad News.